And Lori, the way the agenda is laid out, the citizen comments are item C, and that's for the regular meeting, right? And then the public hearing and item D is the second set of public comments, but no one signed up to speak.
Yeah, no one has signed up to speak on anything on the CCPD.
Okay. All right, let's go ahead and get started. And everyone will have to forgive me. I'm on a smaller laptop with only one screen like a savage, so I have to go back in between windows. So thank you everybody for joining us on the August 17th, 2020 regular meeting of the Jersey Village City Council. Item A, we're going to call to order and announce a quorum is present. Madam Secretary, a quorum is present.
Okay, so Mayor, we're doing the crime control first or the city council meeting?
Well, the way I have it in the agenda is the way I'm going down, and the crime control prevention district. Okay, I see what you're saying. Hang on. Let me swap that out. 1 second.
We're going to do the crime control meeting first, and then as soon as we complete, we'll go right into the council agenda.
I had the wrong agenda. Hang on 1 second. 1 second. Come on, open up. Okay. We're going to go into the crime control prevention district meeting. We're going to open the meeting, call to order, and a roll of the appointed officers will be taken. So we have myself, Andrew Mitchum. We have Sherry Shepard joining us. We have James Singleton. We have Bobby Warren. We have Greg Holden. We have Drew Wasson. We have Gary Wildenhorst. Missing anybody? All right. Everybody's present.
That's correct.
Back in here. Okay, we're going to open for citizen comments. Anyone who desires to address the Crime Control and Prevention District CCPD, board regarding an item on the agenda will be heard at this time in compliance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. Unless the subject matter of the comments is on the agenda, the city staff and CCPD members are not allowed to discuss the subject. Each person is limited to 5 minutes for comments. The CCPD board. And Lori, you mentioned there is no one signed up to speak.
That's correct.
So we'll move on to item C, consider approval of the minutes of CCPD meeting held July 21st, 2020. I'm looking for a motion on that item.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion on the topic? Seeing none, please indicate by using your hand. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We will move to item D, conduct public hearing on the proposed Jersey Village Crime Control Prevention District budget for the fiscal year 2020-2021. We'll go ahead and just ask Chief if you'll just summarize the budget. We've all looked over this last month. If there's any changes during that period between then and now.
Yes, sir. I'll go ahead and do that. Just want to say hello to everybody, Mr. President, directors. I'm going to go ahead and go over the budget that is in your packet. Uniform supplement, we're requesting $11,000 be added for 2 open positions and 1 additional an evidence tech. We're adding an evidence tech part-time that we'll need uniforms for. The second supplement will be ammo and targets. We're transitioning from 1 annual qualification, which is required by TCOL, to 2 to make sure that we're proficient in that. And also we'll have open range day quarterly for officers. We also do annual firearms training for all our fire marshals. So we're asking for $4,000 be added to that account. And the tools and equipment supplement, we're asking for taser cartridges for additional 5,100. Supplies used during the reoccurring annual taser proficiencies will be 2,100. We're also asking for $13,000 to replace ballistic vest. Out of that $13,000, $8,000 will be refunded on the grant program. So we'll only be $5,000 out of our account. And then I'm also asking for the protective gear for our officers that would include helmets, ceramic plates, and a duffel bag. And that's more of the heavier protection in case you do have to go into an officer call shooting, or if we do have something that we'd had to secure a scene to call it a TAC team or something like that. We're requesting that. And that cost was $43,900. Going down to miscellaneous equipment, we're asking for a card reader. This card reader will be an additional $4,500. And as we're going for our recognition program, as we've discussed before, this would be something that would be required, that you'd have to card reader for the evidence room to have that audit in case you need to pull that up. Going down to training and travel training, I'm requesting an additional $4,000 so we can start sending some of our command staff to some executive training, some from LEMET to FBI, those type of training I think would be very beneficial for them. So that'd be an additional $4,000 being requested on the travel training budget. Going to personnel, we're adding one additional which will be a total of 15 officers from our, that will be paying out of the crime district. And then the part-time evidence tech, what we're doing with that money is we had a part-time detective. And so we're just bringing in a part-time evidence tech, which is going to offset that cost. So there won't be any additional cost on that. We also did, when we went to the 12-hour shifts, we're going to have to add another $62,920 to cover that additional cost that we're requesting. If you go down supplement special equipment, we're asking for on the EOC and the training room, we're going to ask for some new equipment. It's fairly old equipment. We're going to ask for $6,000 for new video, audio equipment for that room. Also, we're asking for an additional 4 flock cameras that we've discussed that we want to strategically plant. And some of our apartment complex, we have them in the front, but not in the rear. So we're asking for that. As everyone knows, the flock program has been very successful for us. And so we're requesting that $6,000 for the audio equipment and $8,000 for the flock. Also, we're asking for 2 new Tahoes that will be outfitted for our patrol division for $49,575. That is the end of my proposal for our budget. And if I have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer those.
Okay, since this is a public hearing, the public hearing portion, I'm going to go ahead and finish the script here. There being no one desiring to speak, I now close the public hearing of the City of Jersey Village Crime Control Prevention District's proposed annual budget for fiscal year 2020-2021. And what we'll do is, give me 1 second, put that over. We're going to go ahead and if anyone has any questions for the chief about the supplementals that he spoke about, now's your time to ask questions, make comments, concerns.
Chief, I've got a couple of questions. Are these all the same items we talked about during the budget workshop?
Yes.
On the Tahoes, those vehicles are already in the vehicle replacement program?
Yes, sir. Those are already in the replacement program. And those are the ones that were scheduled to come to be, 2 were added this year. Yes, sir.
Okay. And then on the part-time, I'm kind of curious, a lot of times we do part-time because we can eliminate a lot of the ancillary costs of health insurance and things like that. How are you implementing a part-time detective position?
That's what we used to have as a part-time detective. I eliminated that position during COVID when we basically were having people, non-essential personnel, went ahead and let that person basically just stay at home because we didn't want him up here. And looking at the budget, and when I started looking and talking to a lot of the two sergeants that were actually doing the evidence, it took a lot of time out of their day, and to be more proficient and to have somebody really trained to do that, which they're trained, but somebody that does that on a regular basis, I thought it'd be best just to go ahead and replace that detective with an evidence tech. And definitely as we go towards our recognition program, it will be important to have that position. So it's just offsetting.
Okay.
Actually, it's less money when we look at the dollars, the hourly rate that the detective was being paid, and the hourly rate that the evidence tech that will be coming in.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for the chief?
Evidence management is very, very technical. Austin, the PD had some restrictions on part-time, but it was due to coronavirus. It wasn't that one employee that we didn't want up there. Were there other departments that also had part-time restrictions? I know a lot of agencies did that.
Yeah, we didn't, I mean, we tried to keep full-time staff here as much as we can. We limited some of the part-time people except where we needed it. But I would say it was more of a conscious effort citywide to try and control some of the budgetary unknowns.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, concerns for the chief? Okay. With that, I'm going to move on to item E, consider resolution number 2020-03, adopting a budget for the ensuing fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2020 and ending September 30th, 2021. Any discussion on this ordinance? If not, I'm looking for a motion in a second.
I move that we approve resolution 2020-003.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion on the topic? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. All right. We will move into item F, election and appointment of officers, president, vice president, and secretary for the term beginning on September 1st, 2020, and will end August 31st, 2021. That's got my name on it. Lori, you can help me out here if you want.
I think at this time we would call for nominations. Somebody wants to make a nomination for a slate of candidates, or if they want to go first the president, then the vice president.
Okay.
We typically do the slate.
Yeah, that's usually how we do almost everything. So when it comes to this part, so I'm looking for a slate of candidates from somebody, a motion, and then we'll have a second after that.
I move we punish the current members and renew the slate.
All right. I have a motion.
I'll second.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. I think Greg got in the second first. Any more discussion on the topic? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I abstain.
Bobby Warren abstains.
And President Mitchum, you abstain as well?
I do. I don't want to be too important. All right. With that, we will move to adjourn.
Okay, so everybody stays on and just goes right into the other agenda.
Yes, let me bring that up. Get started on that. So we'll start the regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Jersey Village on this Monday, August 17th, 2020. We're going to move into item A, call to order and announce the quorum is present. Madam Secretary, quorum is present.
Yes.
Move into item B, invocation and pledge of allegiance by former City Council member Sherry Shepherd.
Thank you. Heavenly Father, we come to you today to say thank you for our many blessings. Thank you for the city, our police, our fire departments, our city staff, and our volunteers that work hard to make this a great place to live, work, and play. We ask that you continue to bestow your blessings upon us and guide us down a path that brings glory to you. We ask all these things in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Can I say pledge of allegiance? Go ahead.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag,
To the
of
The United States of
States
America
of America,
republic,
and to the republic for which it stands,
Yes.
one nation,
under God,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Sherry. We will move into item C, citizen comments. Citizens who have signed a card and wish to speak to the city council will be heard at this time in compliance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. Unless the subject matter of the comment is on the agenda, the city staff and city council members are prevented from discussing the subject and may respond only with statements of factual information or existing policy. Citizens are limited to 5 minutes in their comments to city council. Lori, we have one person that has signed up to speak. That would be Mark Malloy.
that's correct.
And Mark, whenever you're ready, we'll unmute you. Looks like you're muted right now, but go ahead and unmute Mark and we'll start your 5 minutes, sir. Can somebody unmute?
I can't do it. For some reason, it's not working for me.
All right, hang on, Mark. Let's get you unmuted.
It's not working for me.
Is Bob able to do it?
He went away. Oh,
There we go. Oh, he was unmuted for a second.
There we go.
How about now, Mark? Can you hear us?
Yes. I
Okay,
can hear
go
you.
ahead,
Can you
Mark.
hear-
I'll start your 5 minutes now.
Okay. Mark Malloy, 7803 Hamilton Circle, past city council member of the city of Jersey Village, Texas. Citizens' comments for the 08/17/2020 city council meeting. Please make my verbal comments and documents given to the city secretary a permanent record of the meeting. I have signed in to the Jersey Village City Council virtual engagement meeting this evening to ask the city government to give the citizens of Jersey Village, Texas, the full 20% homestead exemption instead of the 14% homestead exemption that the government is giving them at this time. I'm asking that the 65-year and older additional homestead exemption be increased to $160,000 instead of the $75,000 exemption that the city government is giving them at this time. I listened to the city council budget work session held 8/20/2020 and 8/21/2020. The city government, from what I had listened to, does not have any plans of increasing the homestead exemption to the 20% or increasing the 65-year and older additional exemption increase to the $160,000 from the current $75,000 exemption. The city government is most likely going to approve an additional $200,000 in pay parity increases to the city staff. The city government is going to most likely approve a 2% minimum up to 4% pay increase for the city employees. The city employees' health care insurance premium that the taxpayers of Jersey Village pay, a majority of, is going up 4.8% this year. The city government has an estimated $8.2 million tied up in a land purchased by the city government on the south side of US 290. The city government has their plan to spend an additional $8 million on a new city hall located on the south side of US 290. So anyway, basically, the other part of what I wanted to say is that the Jersey Village city government is planning on bypassing the Jersey Village taxpayers on being allowed to vote on if they want the city government to spend per contractor bid estimates $5 or more million on the new golf course clubhouse convention center after an estimated 500 homes flooded in the city of Jersey Village, Texas in the year 2001 The city government hired an engineering firm to do a stormwater flood mitigation study to determine what could be done to reduce the flooding problem. One of the engineering study's recommendations was to build a 111-foot above sea level berm around the perimeter of the golf course. The berm was never built. The city government, after the 2016 tax day flood, paid for another flood mitigation engineering study, and one of the results of that study was to build a 108-foot above sea level berm around the perimeter of the golf course. The city government decided they did not want to build the berm at that second engineering study height. The city government then hired, from what I understand, is the engineering firm that originally recommended that the berm should be built at 111 feet above sea level, and now the recommendation has changed to recommend that the golf course berm can be built at 107 feet above sea level. The city government has reduced the elevation of the golf course berm by 4 feet. Question I have is why and how many residential homes and other properties will continue to be at risk of flooding due to the city government not wanting to build the berm at the original 2003 engineering study height of 111 feet above sea level. To me, it comes down to the city government's most important concern is the money losing, heavily taxpayer subsidized golf course above all other issues. So anyway, I guess that's about it for tonight. So I appreciate you giving me time to talk.
Thank you, Mark. Is there anyone else desiring to speak? If not, we will move on to item D, section D, item 1, crime control, City of Jersey Village Crime Control Prevention District. Item 1, receive the adopted fiscal year 2020-2021 budget from the Jersey Village Crime Control Prevention District. Lori Cootie, that has your name on it.
Yes, Mayor, this is just a housekeeping item to go on the record that you have received the adopted budget from the Crime Control Prevention District. No action is needed, and we can move on to the next item.
Okay. So let me pull this up real quick. Regular session, CCPD. All right, got a script. We'll move to item D2, conduct a public hearing on the Jersey Village Crime Control Prevention District's budget for the fiscal year 2020-2021. I now call to order this public hearing of the Jersey Village Crime Control and Prevention District budget for the fiscal year 2020-2021. Everyone desiring to speak at this hearing should complete a public hearing comment card and present it to the city secretary. The purpose of today's hearing is to give all interested parties the right to appear and be heard concerning the Jersey Village Crime Control and Prevention District's adopted budget for the fiscal year 2020-2021. I would now like to request the Chief of Police, Kirk Riggs, to summarize the subject of this public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I presented the crime district budget a few minutes ago, and I'll just say, do you want me to go over that again, or just you have any questions on what I presented earlier tonight?
Anybody have anything for the chief? Something that popped in your head in the last 15 minutes? Okay. There being no one desiring to speak, I now close this public hearing on the Jersey Village Crime Control and Prevention District's adopted budget for the fiscal year 2020-2021. And we'll move into item D3, consider resolution number 2020-37, adopting the Jersey Village Crime Control and Prevention District budget for the fiscal year 2020-2021. Looking for a motion on the resolution.
I'll move we adopt resolution number 2020-37.
Second.
I have a motion from Gary Wilbenhorst and a second by Drew Lawson. Any more discussion on the topic? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Sherry, thank you much. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. See you next time.
All right, thanks.
All right. We'll move on to item E, City Manager's Report. Does anyone on council have any questions for Austin about the City Manager reports?
Yeah, I've got a couple. Actually, maybe this isn't right, but I mean, Austin, I was just wondering, hold on a second, I got to get my video back. I was just wondering, I don't know if this is a proper question at this time, but how much money has been spent on the wayfinding and the monuments at this point on that project? Do you have that number handy?
I don't have that number right offhand.
All right. Wasn't one of your reports anyway, so
Austin,
I'll catch up with you.
Sure.
Austin, is there anything that you wanted to, I know we have a new Parks and Recs director who's joining us. Is there anything that you wanted to highlight in your manager report?
Yeah, I want to definitely welcome Robert Basford. He's our new Parks and Rec director. He's got a lot of great experience coming from Florida, and he spent the last year down in Pearland. We're excited to have him on board. Otherwise, do you want to point out the golf course had a great month last month. Right now, the deficit for the year is about $15,000, which is fantastic for the year. So that's doing great, but otherwise the report is there. If council has any questions, we're free to answer.
In doing my homework, my favorite part of the agenda and the packet that we get is the city manager's report. It has so much information in it. And what's great about it too is it's actually all available to citizens. So citizens can download the packet every single month and see the same information that their city council members see and make decisions on. And I wanted to point out a couple of things. We're not meeting in person, so normally I'd give you a high five and a handshake, but Harry, I just want to say thanks for your report is always very extensive and detailed, and we didn't really have that previously with the Public Works Director. I can really go through that PDF that you send out and see what's being worked on, where things stand. There's a lot of, you do a really good job of pointing out your staff members who do a really good job of saving the city a lot of money doing things in-house these days. So I wanted to just say thank you for that. And the police reports that are in there too, and the fire department reports that are in there, they really do a good job of letting us know exactly what's going on in the city. The crime stats are great. They're year-over-year crime stats. Definitely with COVID going on, there's actually been a drop in crime in the city. But it's just great to see that cases are actively being worked, they're being resolved. It's great to see all of the runs that the fire department does. Our EMS are very active at the moment. So this is all information that is available to every citizen. If they want to know what's going on in each department, you're welcome to call and ask me and ask your city council members, but you can always download the city packet and look at it and go into the city manager report and look at the finances for the city, look at the different reports for what's being worked on, the different things that are happening with the golf course, happening with public works. It's a great information packet. One of the really neat things that I'm seeing right now is, and I watch this number, it's one thing that I pull up almost every single week, is the sales tax numbers. And with a global pandemic going on, the city is still more than likely, or actually not likely, we're already surpassed this week with the reports that came in. We're $172,000 over the sales tax projected budget that we projected even before COVID. That we projected, we're still over that, and we still have more to go. And so we're now projecting an overage of about $700,000 above what we did last year, above what we projected. And that just, a lot of us campaigned on increasing the sales tax revenue base so that we're not such a property tax based, revenue based general fund. And to see that actually happen sooner than I ever anticipated, but also given all of the challenges that we've hit with everything that's happened over the last 5 years, including this pandemic, that we've basically done that. That speaks to a group effort of past and current city leadership, past and current city managers, past and current city staff, all working toward, all identifying the problem, finding what other cities have successfully implemented in order to get this goal accomplished, putting that in place and then executing it. And we're seeing the results, and the beneficiaries are the citizens who are hopefully, we already raised the homestead exemption, we already raised the over 65 exemption, disabled exemptions. We can definitely chat about that as a possibility of doing it again because of what's happening. But also the type of businesses that are coming into our city are better. So it's a quality of life thing, it's a revenue thing, it's putting money back into the pockets of our citizens who have been paying taxes in the city for a really long time at a comparatively higher rate, but being able to give that money back to them. And that was a goal that a lot of us got on council to accomplish. And I mean, I'm not going to put a banner behind me that says mission accomplished, but we did it. These numbers are very, very promising, and year over year they're sticking around. That's the other thing. It doesn't seem to be a flash in the pan. They're sticking. They've trended upward. They've stuck that way, and I think this is something that should definitely be celebrated. So I wanted to say thanks to everybody who's participated in that. Is there any other comments about the city manager report from any other council members? All right, we will move along to the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that a city council member would like to move to the regular agenda? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion on the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion by Gary Robenhorst and a second by Bobby Warren. Any more discussion on the topic? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Move along to the regular session agenda. Item number 1, consider resolution number 2020-39, authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Quit Zollers Incorporated for CDBG-MIT grant engineer/architectural surveying services. And that's Austin Glee, city manager.
Mayor and councilors, we had a look at this last month. We added a little bit more information to the agenda request this month. We've included the summary of all the total points for each of the respondents. You can tell that we had 3 that were very close overall for the responses. We also included the RFQ criteria for scoring so council could see the matrix that all of the engineering firms were graded on. Zollers, they came out ahead of the rest. They have a lot of great experience. They came highly recommended from other communities. The total level of effort for the application that we're looking at right now is estimated at $26,000. We're looking at, right now it looks like a water project, which would come from the utility fund for the pre-application work there. We've got a list of the services that they would do for the pre-funding services, helping to create the application. And the post-funding services, those costs will be set at the GLO rates if we're awarded a grant. If there's any questions from council, happy to answer those.
Any questions for Austin? Okay, this was the item that we tabled last month, correct?
Correct, yep.
And everyone who had concerns, has this new information brought to your attention? Any other concerns? Okay. If not, I'm looking for. Oh, yeah,
Real quick, Austin. Will the grant cover the pre-funded spend if we get it?
No, the grant would not cover the pre-funding things.
That said, if we don't get the grant, would we go ahead and do this project, if not now, in the future, and where we could leverage the study?
Right. We could definitely leverage some of it in the future, not all of it, but you could definitely leverage some of it.
Okay.
Any other questions for Austin? If not, looking for a motion on resolution number 2020-39.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. That was Greg Holden with the motion and Gary Wilbenhorst with the second. Any more discussion on the topic? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. We will move on to item number 2, consider resolution number 2020-40, authorizing an interlocal grant agreement of Coronavirus Relief Fund, CRF, Small Cities teams and conditions between the city of Jersey Village and Harris County. Austin Blees, city manager.
Mayor and councilors, recently the Commissioners Court voted to authorize $55 per person based on the 2018 census numbers for COVID-related expenses to local municipalities. So that would mean that Jersey Village is eligible for up to $437,910. Right now, we've got about $30,000 in expenses for supplies. We could also get reimbursed for some of the extra sick time we've had to pay out for the emergency paid sick leave. The other big thing about this $437,000 that we could do is we could allocate some of that to the county to utilize for business grants to Jersey Village businesses that have applied. If the council wants to do that, partnering with the county to do that would be fantastic. They would run the program. They've already got everything set up, the applications, all the people there to manage it. That'd be my strong recommendation to do that if the council wants to go down that route. We cannot be we can be reimbursed. We can be reimbursed for costs that we incur from here until the end of the calendar year as well. So I wouldn't recommend earmarking all of it for businesses or whatever. I would try and leave some back, and we can always go back later if we need to. So in order to move forward with this, we need the council to approve resolution 2020-40. And if there's kind of a dollar threshold that the council is thinking to allocate towards the business grants, that information would be useful as well.
Well, that was my question, whether that should be necessary, shouldn't it?
I would recommend it. I think that's going to be a great use. I don't think we're going to use the $437,000. Last week I did ask the county if they could tell us how many Jersey Village businesses had applied, and they said that they would get back to me with that information, and I haven't yet gotten that information. So I don't know the level of need that's out there from that. I do know that most of the people that filled out the form when we had that out there back in early or mid-March, I guess, early into the COVID stuff, there was about 12 or so applicants or people that expressed interest in that. And I'm assuming most of them probably tried to get in on the county things as well. And there might be some that went for the county that didn't give us their information as well. So I don't have a good number as to how many businesses are out there in Jersey Village that want it or what number to really recommend.
Well, if we have 438,000 allocated and we've already spent 30,000, how much more would you think? I would suggest that we cover our costs and then allocate the rest back to the county.
I would say if we allocated somewhere between 200 and 300,000 to the county, I think that would be okay. I want to leave some buffer just in case we have more expenses. And if we get to November and we're not having very much, we can always come back and rediscuss the issue at that point.
I can't think of anything different that would occur in the future that hasn't already occurred in the past few months. I'm thinking that 300,000 might be a good number.
I tend to agree. If you do the math on that, if we were to take the $30,000 that we already have expenses for and gave $300,000 back to the county for a local small business grant fund, what would be left over for any future expenses for the city from now until the end of the calendar year would be about $108,000. I think that's a pretty substantial buffer just in case. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask if you knew roughly what the amount was that we've paid out for extra sick time under the emergency paid sick leave.
As of the through July, it was about $18,000, I want to say.
Okay.
I think $300,000 going towards some local businesses who are very much struggling at this time. We thought about doing that at the very beginning of COVID on our own dime and doing our own program. I can say that the program that Harris County put together, I think they ran it through HTAC, and it was run very, very well. And I'm assuming they have probably used the same interface, as a document portal. You submitted all that you needed to submit, and it was run very efficiently. They followed up all the time. So I think our business owners would be in very good hands. And I think that number is a good, for the type of businesses that we have, and the type of businesses that are impacted by COVID with people with the lower foot traffic. I think that would be a very good number. So my recommendation would be to make a motion. I can't make a motion, but you guys can, of $300,000 being allocated for a small business grant fund.
I think I'm possibly in the minority on this, and I understand the first instinct to cover our own costs. But looking at past meetings, city managers' reports, our current budget and actuals, we've actually had a fairly decent year. And we really haven't been affected by COVID to the extent that a lot of the smaller players have. And I can understand wanting to cover our 30,000, possibly 18,000 in emergency fund, but I'm wondering if we hold off on that for right now, and let's see how much of the funds are used by small business in our city, and come back to it. If there's enough applications that they use up what we allocate them now. Maybe we put all of this money. This is extra cash. This is reimbursement for disaster funds that we can eat 30,000 pretty easily. We really can. And a lot of small businesses can't. And if there are enough applications in the city for the full amount, I would rather see the full amount go to the small businesses that were much more impacted than our city was.
Any thoughts on that?
A question. So if we allocate it back to the county, will that money be used exclusively for Jersey Village businesses?
Correct. Exclusively for Jersey Village businesses.
And if it isn't used,
They would have to allocate it back to us. I would say it'd be easier to allocate a portion of our funds to the county, and then if there's a need for more, to come back and reallocate more of our funds to the county back in September, October. We are not under any time constraints to submit reimbursement requests. We can gather all the documentation and be ready to submit a reimbursement for whatever the final number is going to be. And we can hold off on that until November if we wanted to. So if we want to go with what Councilor Singleton's suggesting, we can certainly, go that route. But I guess I would not recommend going over the $300,000 at the moment, just because I don't know what else, what the county has for need, or what the businesses have for need to the county.
well, that's my feelings, is go to the 300, and then if we're not using it and businesses are needing it, then we go higher.
Yeah,
That's fair.
I think that seems like a good compromise, and I agree with James there. I mean, I have no problem giving it all to a program, but I think let's see what the $300,000 does, because that's great that it's Jersey Village only businesses, and small businesses. I'm sure we're allowed to set what the parameters need to be. Let's see who applies, let's see what we can get, and if it ends up being more, we can come back to this and add more of our allocation back to that fund. Does that sound like something everyone can agree on?
Yeah, that makes sense. And hopefully if the sales tax numbers being so strong still is any indication, businesses might need a little help, but not as much as some
Right.
other
Well,
places.
it goes to show, I mean, businesses are contributing to our general fund just as much as they're myself and you and other property owners. They are as part of this community that funds our quality of life and contribute so much to our city, that when it's their time of need. I think I mentioned this at the beginning of COVID. I got a little choked up actually, because I know what it's like to go through a disaster and you're looking at your business just fall apart. And luckily, a lot of them have appeared to have pulled through and excelled and adapted and done a fantastic job of emerging in this time. But if there can be any sort of help, I mean, I'm a business owner myself. I probably would not be allowed to apply for this, but it would be great for businesses to have that ability to add on to their bottom line and help and exceed and make that number go up. So with that, I'm looking for a motion. Lori, go ahead.
So Austin, I wanted to ask, on moving forward, does the council just need to have a consensus on the amount and then vote on the resolution? Or is the 300,000 part of the resolution?
If we can, I guess maybe we should add section 4 to the resolution, allocating $300,000 to the grant funds.
Okay.
So with that, I'm looking for a motion on resolution number 2020-40.
I move that we approve resolution 2020-40 as adding section 4 as described by Austin.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion by James Singleton and a second by Bobby Warren. Any more discussion on the topic? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. For this next item, myself and Drew Wilson have signed conflict of interest forms, and we will be recusing ourselves from this item, and we'll return after Mayor Pro Tem Bobby Warren completes this item.
Okay, and in just to be clear, Lori, in recusing, do they need to leave the meeting or?
They should mute themselves and have no discussion and no vote.
Got it. Okay, just wanted to be sure. Then moving on to the agenda item, we will call agenda item G3, consider ordinance number 2020-19, amending chapter 6 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Jersey Village, alcoholic beverages by amending section 6.7, consumption prohibited between certain hours at certain places to allow for consumption and sales at times, locations in accordance with the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Code, providing a penalty, providing severability, providing for publication, and providing an effective date. And this has, let's see whose name is on this.
Lori.
Lori, thank you. Lori, if you could introduce this item.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, this item is came about because Chapter 105 of the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Code permits certain types of businesses carrying certain types of permits issued by or licenses issued by the TABC to sell alcohol during the hours of 10 a.m. and 12 noon, as long as they, with that order, serve food. And this item is basically just to bring our code up to date with Chapter 105 of the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission.
Okay. So with that, any discussion on the item?
Well, Lori, what brought this on?
We did have an initial business in town call and ask about it, stating that they had been in contact with the TABC about whether they could or they couldn't under the license that they held from TABC, and they were explained by them that yes, they could if it was not against or if it was permitted by the city as well. We did a little bit of research, and I believe that Justin, if you want to chime in, that we have to follow state law anyway, or how does that work?
Yeah, for this, so the particular deal on this one was that there's for certain permit holders, I think I can't remember now, Lori, but I think it's the beer, there's wine, a couple others, mixed beverage, mixed beverage, however TABC labels them. They limit hours on when you can use those permits, but there's this exception for several of those permits that say, between the hours of generally between 10 and noon or around that time, as long as you serve food with the beverage, then you can have these extended hours. And the way that the TABC writes it, those look like, at least in my opinion, they look by right for the permit holder as long as you're following that particular rule. But so the change here was taking what was essentially just a blank prohibition against serving alcohol before noon for certain requirements and allowing that to be amended if this permit holder met those qualifications from TABC. So essentially that's why it says it's just to bring it into line with the TABC rules, is that in some instances, there's going to be certain permit holders that can serve before noon on Sundays. But really that's between TABC and the permit holder for how they do that. And TABC's rules are pretty clear that, how that extra 2 hours or 3 hours can be handled. And so I think this amendment will help the city just make that a little bit less of a headache for everybody.
In other words, we're avoiding the possibility that a permit holder who has action taken against them by the city under our ordinance doesn't sue us on the basis that their permit allows them and state law trumps our municipal law.
Right.
That's probably smart. Any other discussion on the item?
Lori, in the past, I've seen several of these ordinances that have changed our rules, and a lot of times they are done by you've taken a very proactive approach in trying to make sure that our ordinances stay in line with TABC state laws. And
yes,
that this to me looks like it's just like all those previous times where we have made sure that the city stayed in line with state law. Correct?
That's correct.
TABC laws frustrate me to begin with. They are convoluted and not very conducive to doing business. But the more we can stay in line with state law and just match their rules, so we're not changing or, like Bobby said, avoiding litigation because we're being more restrictive and not inconsistent with the state. I support this.
Yeah,
I will. Oh, go ahead, Greg.
in looking at ordinances like this, I generally, being in line with state law makes it easier for everybody, but also even from a competitive advantage, I would hate to place more restrictions on Jersey Village businesses than the businesses they compete against. So, I mean, we look at barriers to entry, look at ease of doing business. This is one of the ordinances that allows them to compete on an even playing field. So I totally agree that that we need to be in line with TABC and in line with all the other businesses that they compete with.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I will say, I know that sometimes people are a little concerned when it comes to talking about loosening restrictions on alcohol. They think about noise and you know, crime and rowdiness and all of that. I will say the Sunday brunch crowd is probably not the first thing you think about when you think about people getting drunk and rowdy. So I would say that this is from a safety standpoint is probably a pretty safe bet. And I'm willing to bet that for a lot of the people here in Jersey Village, that this would be a very popular move, particularly if they can go to brunch someplace pretty close by instead of going elsewhere. To Greg's point, they probably are going elsewhere because they don't have other options. So it's great that there is a business that is interested in providing that. So I think it'd be popular overall. Any further discussion on this item? If not, I'd entertain a motion at this time.
I'll move we approve ordinance 2020-19.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion by Councilmember Wubenhorst and a second by Councilmember Singleton. Just as a reminder for anyone listening, before we move to a vote, the city charter does allow, when the mayor pro tem is presiding, allows for me to vote, even though the presiding officer typically would not. So before we move to a vote, any further discussion? Okay, so on ordinance 2020-19, all those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those against? Any abstentions? And with that, the motion passes unanimously. I will now turn the presiding chair back over to Mayor Mitchum.
Thank you, Bobby. Appreciate that. Move along to item number 4. Consider ordinance number 2020-20, adopting the water and wastewater rate calculation methods recommended by Jones, Carter, and Raftelis. Harry Ward, Public Works Director.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Last month, we tackled one of the requirements for the budget, and that was impact fees. We had to set impact fees for the upcoming projects for the next 5 years. Jones and Carter was retained to do that, and they look 10 years ahead in setting the 5-year rate. Because the research and the second thing that we have to fulfill is the water and wastewater rate schedule for the next 5 years. A lot of that research overlaps, so it made sense to retain Jones and Carter to also do the water and wastewater rate study for us. So we have Alan Moon and a company called Raftelis who did the financial modeling to explain that.
Okay, Alan, go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I want to thank you for the opportunity to work and present the water and wastewater rates analysis. So like Harry said, in conjunction with the capital improvements plan and impact fee study that was presented last month, we've been working with the city and with Raftelis to analyze and evaluate the water and wastewater rates. We've been working with Austin, with Harry and Isabel with the city, and with Angie Flores and Tim Williams with Reptelis since February on this analysis. So Angie Flores is here tonight to present the findings of the rate study. And so I believe Angie is also calling in. I don't know if there's a attendee with an area code of 512, but I think that's how she wanted to present.
All right, there's
Be unmuted.
okay. I think we're joined. Okay, go right ahead.
Okay, can y'all hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Okay, so let me start sharing my screen. Let's see here. Okay, so I am Angie Flores. I'm with Reptelis as, let's see. Hopefully you can see the presentation mode.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, so I'm Angie Flores. I'm with Reptelis. We've been working, as Alan was saying, with Jones Carter to complete a financial planning and rate study for you. I'm located in Austin and have worked with Alan and Jones and Carter on other projects in the past. We've been excited to work with the City of Jersey Village through this process. I put together this presentation to just basically walk you through the process that we've gone through for the rate study. Please feel free to stop me if you have any questions as I go through the presentation. On this slide, you'll see a brief agenda of what I'm going to cover. Basically, I'll start with the objectives of the study and then go through really all of the assumptions that we put into the model to complete that rate study. The objectives of the study was really to complete a 10-year financial plan for the city that allows you to see the projections for the city as it relates to water and wastewater rates. And this plan will allow the city to maintain the financial health of your utility. Part of the objectives was to look at your costs, as it relates to the utility, and develop the revenue requirements based on your historical costs, your budgets, and that projection. In looking at that revenue requirement, we looked at your capital program and developed a profile for those capital projects. Jones Carter, as you know, was doing an impact fee study that allowed us to pull into the financial plan your capital projects. Finally, in looking at your revenue requirements and your cost of your utility, we projected what your rates would need to be for the 5-year forecast period. And we'll be talking about that at the end of this presentation. When we do financial planning, the financial plan elements are very important and become the foundation of the financial plan. We look at our inputs as shown here on the slide, looking at your customer accounts, your billed consumption, the revenues of the utility, your expenses, and your capital plan. And obviously, it's important to look at the city's cash position to ensure that you have a stable utility in the forecast period that we're looking at. So again, just taking into account the capital project funding, looking at your policies and targets to really determine what your annual cash flows will look like based on all of those assumptions. In particular, for Jersey Village, we did look at your historical consumption and then base your consumption forecast based on historical growth. The revenues that we've considered in your financial planning model are based on your historical consumption, your existing rates, and ensuring that you're covering your revenue requirements or expenses as it relates specifically to your needs. The next part I'm going to cover here are the connections and consumption that we considered in the model. This table shows your water connections by class. So you have 7 classes. You have residential sprinklers, commercial sprinklers, your municipal accounts, and then you have an outside city commercial customer. So in total, your connections are about 3,200. You have seen a little bit of growth over the past 3 years in connections, and those are primarily reflected in your residential customers, as you can see here on this table. Your sewer customers are closer to about 2,400 connections, and in your sewer classes you have residential, commercial, and again your municipal accounts are reflected here. This next graph shows your historical water consumption. As you can see, overall your water consumption kind of stays the same by class. You can see here that in 2019, when we had some rain, I know in Texas we had rain really until about June or July of last year. And so that's probably what is reflected here in some of these reduced consumptions in 2019. But overall, your consumption stays about the same, and again is mostly affected by weather, which is kind of what we see throughout Texas. These next graphs, I like to show these to our clients so that you can see how your consumption varies depending on summer usage throughout any year. So this graph here is your residential water consumption by month. For your residential class, your average monthly usage per connection is about 6,000 gallons. Now, you do have a sprinkler class for your residential customers. So while you are seeing that increase in summer usage, some of that is tempered by the fact that you do have some residential customers that have a separate sprinkler meter. But still, you see the effect of watering that happens in the summertime, which is, again, what you typically see for a residential class. So this graph shows your sprinkler consumption. And so here you can really see that pronounced increase in consumption in the summer months. And so that's reflected here in this peak monthly usage of 11,000. So on average, when you consider the 12 months, your sprinkler class will use about 4,400 gallons on average, but in these peak months, that usage increases to about 11,000 gallons. So again, that's pretty typical for sprinklers because everyone uses those sprinklers mostly in the summertime. And as reflected here, it really decreases in the winter months. So here is your commercial class. Your average monthly consumption on average for your commercial customers is 66,000 gallons. So this reflects what you typically see for a commercial class. But what's different for your commercial class from residential class is that their usage typically stays pretty level throughout the calendar year. But just like we saw in the residential sprinkler class, on your commercial class, you see this increase in consumption in the summer months. again, because the sprinklers are used more in the summer months, and then really reduces in those months where we have more rain and it's cooler. For your commercial sprinkler class, that average usage is about 36,000 gallons, but in this peak month, that's closer to 86,000 gallons. So you do have one commercial customer that's outside the city limits. So I did want to show you their consumption. You can see that their consumption seems to stay. It does look like it changed a little bit between 2017 and 2018. We're only showing your consumption on 2019 through September, since we looked at this through for fiscal year. Their average monthly usage is 9,100 gallons per month. So while they do use about 200, or they did in 2018 use about 272,000 gallons. In 2017, that was only 144,000 gallons. For the OCL commercial customer, they also have a sprinkler meter, but it's interesting. Their consumption is staying pretty level for the sprinkler system. My guess is that's due to some common areas that they tend to water all year long. But you still see that their consumption is reduced in these winter months. So their average monthly consumption for that meter is about 5,800 gallons. So this is your historical sewer consumption. Sewer is a little bit different in how we bill it. As y'all know, residential is based on winter usage, an average of your winter consumption. Commercial is going to be based on actual water usage. But again, you know, that doesn't really fluctuate a whole lot in the historical consumption data. This slide really it reflects the fact that we use a winter average. And so you can see that in 2019, the winter average actually went down, again, reflecting that reduced consumption for the winter months. Your reduced water consumption in the winter months. So it did go down. So the average monthly usage per connection for residential sewer is 5,000 gallons currently. So this graph again shows the commercial sewer consumption. Again, this is based on actual water usage. It's pretty level, but it does tend to fluctuate month by month. And so here you can see, this is 2019. So what I was talking about was, it rained until about June and it stopped. So then people started watering again. And so you can see that here. So now we get into the revenue requirements, and these represent the cost of the system. Here on this graph, we're showing your operations and maintenance expenses. And this is this reflects the combined utilities. So here we are showing water and sewer combined. You can see the O&M is reflected in the blue bar, or the light blue bar, and then the green bar is the sewer O&M. The dark blue bar here reflects the cash funded capital. And I'll go into the capital here in a little bit, but we are assuming for the forecast period that you will cash fund capital in these years here where you see this dark blue bar. For the O&M, we assumed an increase of 3% in 2021 and then an increase of 2% in costs for the forecast period. We did that for all your costs with the exception of salaries, which were increasing by 3% for the entire forecast period. We are not assuming any debt service in your revenue requirement. You do not have any existing debt service, and instead for the future capital program, that will be cash funded and no debt will be issued. We did go through and allocate costs between your water and sewer utilities. And basically what we did, and this was based on a discussion with staff, we split the O&M 50-50 between water and sewer. And so that's what this represents. This O&M here is the 50% that went to water. In this graph, the capital costs are allocated based on the facilities that are being funded in that year. So these are 100% water facilities. And then we did the same thing for sewer. And so you can see here, these green bars here reflect the sewer facilities that will be funded in the forecast period. So this graph shows the capital improvements, and this just reflects the total capital improvements that we're assuming in the forecast period. In total, they amount to about $7.5 million, and all of that will be cash funded. And so this shows the split between water and sewer. Also, you are collecting impact fees, and there are some impact fee eligible projects that are projected in the 10-year capital improvement plan, but they are not being funded in the 5-year forecast period that we're showing here. They will be funded with impact. Those projects will be funded with impact fees, but they're outside this forecast period. So that is in the financial planning model.
If I can
Go
ask
ahead.
very quickly, Angie, just to kind of drive home the point here. So the capital expenditures that we are seeing reflected here are almost entirely capital expenditures focused on maintaining our current connections. In other words, just maintaining the current infrastructure, whereas the impact fee projects will be the ones that are funded with impact fees will be those related to expanding to new connections.
That's right. That's right. The impact fee eligible projects are your projects related to growth. And so these projects here are mostly just maintenance or here, help me out here, Alan, but rehab, those sorts of things.
Yeah. And the reason I bring that up is just for any citizen that's out there watching this that says, my fees are going up so that such and such new neighborhood can be built or such and such new business can come in, that's not the case here.
Right. No, these are definitely projects that are needed by the city to maintain your utility.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So where are we with rates? So in looking at the financial plan, we looked at your revenue, first looking at where your revenue is based on existing rates. So this assumes that you do nothing to your rates, you leave them at the level that they're at currently. And so you can see here that leaving your rates where they are now, this is the level of revenue that you would collect. Now, that would be sufficient in 2021, but you can see that there's shortfalls that would occur when you compare it to your revenue requirement here. An important thing to look at when we're considering your revenue from rates is your fund balances. And so this reflects your fund balances that the city has currently, and this is 2020. And so you can see that these are your current cash balances. If you were to leave the rates where they are currently, you can see that by 2025, your cash balance is reduced below your target. And this blue line, this light blue line here, reflects your target.
Angie, can you go back to the
So
previous slide?
Yes.
Just want to make sure I'm understanding it.
Yeah.
You have the water O&M and the sewer O&M. That's basically the usage, right?
This reflects your operation and maintenance expenses is what the water O&M and sewer O&M reflects.
That's the expenses.
These are your expenses.
Okay, so
this is your operations cost. Go ahead.
If the column is higher, then there's more usage?
If the column is higher than the line, then your expenses exceed your revenues.
Well, I understand that part. I'm just not understanding how the revenue line is flat when I'm interpreting this chart as showing the usage as being at different levels.
It's actually
well,
not.
Here we're just.
It's showing the cash funded capital. So those are the if you look at the sewer O&M, and I could be wrong, but the sewer O&M and the water O&M, those actually appear to be about the same. It's the capital, it's the cash funded capital that tends to go, varies every year, that tends to drive that whole thing up. So when we're investing in new infrastructure, that drives it up each year.
And this is only
That's
on
a
the
good
existing rates too.
And this is existing rates, yeah.
Right. This assumes that you leave your existing rates the same. So you're essentially collecting the same revenue every year.
Okay.
So for visual purposes, I'm a visual person too. If you take the dark blue out, which is all the capital expenditures, that sewer O&M and water O&M, those would probably look pretty darn similar. So it's the capital.
Right, because we're only
changing.
That's right. That's right. We're only increasing the O&M by about 3% per year.
Right.
So that's correct. The capital, the cash funded capital is what's fluctuating here the most, and that's what's causing it to go up to the 6 million and above.
Right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So as I was saying, without rate adjustments, then you would be reducing your cash balance below your intended target.
How is that target set?
That is based on your financial policy for your operating reserves.
Do we use the same, Isabel, do we use the same policy for our utility as we do for the city's general fund, 25% of operating expenses?
Yes.
I believe that's correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
And so let me go back here. So you can see here that the target is going up slightly, and that's because of the inflation that we're putting on your O&M expenses. So in looking at the financial plan, you know, again, we want to maintain your targets. And so we have made some assumptions for rate adjustments, which I'll go over here shortly. But based on those rate adjustments, and this line reflects those rate adjustments, you can see here that now there are, you know, these 3 years we're meeting those costs. But in these years where the cash funded capital tends to increase, we're still slightly under your revenue requirement. But as you'll see in this next slide, we are able to maintain your cash balance above your target for the forecast period. So essentially what we're doing is utilizing your cash balance to fund those projects, which allows you to keep from issuing debt for the city. So these are the forecasted rate increases that we have in the financial planning model. We've adjusted the base rates by 8.7%. You'll see here shortly that that's not a very big increase. It's actually about $1. And it's only in this first year that we're doing the 8.7% increase to the meter size fee. The rest of the increases are 3% to the volume charges. Now, I do want to point out that we are leaving the outside rates level. Your outside city limit customers are currently paying a pretty significant differential compared to your inside city limit customers. And so we recommend that you leave them the same at this time for the forecast period. So here's the adjustments. And this is your residential class. And I'm going to go through the classes. Let me know how much detail you want me to go into. But here is the dollar here increase that I was talking about. And this reflects that 8.7% increase in the meter fee. The rest of the charges are increasing by 3%. I do want to talk a little bit about your volumetric rates. I just want to say that you know, inclining block rates are what we see for residential classes. So so you're definitely in a good place with your inclining block rates. That's kind of what we see throughout the industry. So we didn't make any adjustments to those volumetric rates. And here in a minute, I'm going to show you what the impact of these rate changes are to your classes. These are the sprinkler water rates. So again, we just made the same adjustment to them. And so here's the, again, with the sprinklers, you have an inclining block rate that charge, you know, they pay more depending on, you know, the more water you use, the more you pay. Here are your commercial rates. So for them, their water meter fee is a little bit higher. So that 8.7% does result in a little bit higher increase. It's $4.35. And then here's their volumetric rates. They have uniform rates, which is, again, typically what we see for a commercial class is a uniform rate. And again, here's your outside city limit commercial customer where we're leaving their rates pretty level, or leaving them level. So for sewer, again, this is your residential class. That 8.7% is a little over $1, but it's going from $17.90 to $19.46. And then the volumetric rates are increasing by 3% for the forecast period. And again, residential pays based on an average water consumption for November through February. And these are the commercial rates. And the outside city limit commercial sewer rates. So what does this mean for your customers? This reflects a customer, a residential customer using 6,000 gallons of water and a sewer of 5,000 gallons. So these were kind of those little benchmarks that I talked about when we were talking about your classes. Obviously, you'll have some residential customers that'll use more than 6,000. You may have some that use less than 6,000. But overall, for an average residential customer, they'll have an increase of about $11 per month for the forecast period. So it'll go from $80 combined bill to $91 for the forecast period. This is your a sprinkler customer. Again, their average usage was about 4,400 gallons. Obviously, in the summertime, it goes up a little bit more, as we saw in the historical consumption slides. But they'll see a $6 per month increase over the forecast period. Now, for those residential customers that have both a regular meter and a sprinkler meter, their combined bill will increase by $16 a month from $123 to $139. And this is all based on those average usages that I had before. Again, that'll vary depending on actual usage.
I don't know if you looked at this or not, but out of curiosity, if someone used the same amount of water, but they didn't have a sprinkler, say they were a residential connection that just used 4,400 more gallons from their single connection, do you know, are they saving money or are they spending more money by having that second connection, ignoring the efficiency of a sprinkler system over a hose and sprinkler?
They would probably be paying a little bit more because, let's see here.
You're charged on the sewer for that, whereas on a sprinkler meter, aren't you exempt from the sewer costs?
Oh, that's a good point.
Okay.
The sprinkler is not included in that sewer cost.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I was just something that kind of stuck out at me when comparing the two, but yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if you don't water your grass during the dormant months, it's probably the same. Although the rates look a little lower for the non-sprinkler.
Yeah, I was just thinking we would want to incentivize the use of the sprinkler meters because generally automated sprinkler systems are more efficient than hose and sprinkler, but yeah, that's good.
Unless you're like my husband and you water anyway without the sprinkler system.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, while you have the upfront cost, the savings and the cheaper water with the lack of sewer fees and the regulation and automatic, there's cost savings in the long run.
Yeah. So here's the commercial customer or commercial bills. They're going to see $129 per month increase over the forecast period. And again, their consumption's a little bit higher. It's at 66,000 and 64,000. Although, you know, even though it's higher, they do have a uniform rate. So it's not going to necessarily fluctuate a whole lot like you do with the residential class. And here's the commercial sprinkler. They'll see theirs won't increase quite as much. You know, it'll increase $39. Again, this is primarily due to the fact that the commercial sprinkler is on a uniform rate and not an inclining block like you have on your residential sprinkler. So again, from a total combined, they're going to see an increase of $168 per month over the forecast period. So that concludes my presentation. If y'all have any questions. Now, I think y'all are going to be considering an ordinance that will adopt those 5-year forecast rates.
Any questions from council?
The only question I had is on residential rates. Once it got over 25,000 gallons, it just about doubled. What's the thought process behind that?
Typically with your inclining block rates, you want to, you know, there's usually a objective of conservation. And so typically those inclining block rates will have much higher rate in those upper blocks, really to try to incentivize less consumption. You likely don't have a whole lot of customers that use water in that upper block. So you really have to balance when you're looking at your revenues. You really need to balance. You don't want to push too much of your revenues out into those upper blocks, but typically when these inclining block rates are adopted, again, it's to promote conservation and incentivize folks to use less water. And so you tend to have that upper block really send a price signal.
Yeah, are there any provisions for instance, people filling a swimming pool for a kind of a one-off deal? Do we make any provisions within the city for that, Austin?
Isabel.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. What we usually do is if they fill out the pool during the winter month, we take that provision and we were not charging the sewer charges because of filling up the pool.
Okay.
Yeah, since we use the water during the winter month to charge for the sewer charges, if they do that during the winter month, then when we calculate the water usage during the winter month, if they fill up the pool, we don't use we take off the water that they use to fill up the pool. So to charge them for the sewer charges.
Okay, so there are provisions to help people with that.
Are those on a separate meter? Pools generally would, I don't have one, so I don't know if they're.
No, they're typically on the same meter.
On the same meter, yes.
Okay.
Don't fill your pool in the wintertime.
Well,
Or if you do, let Isabel know.
well, if you do, you have to let finance know, and we will take away the difference of the water that you use to fill up the pool. So we will not charge you we will not charge you extra for the sewer.
I'm just going to run a hose down from your house, Gary.
You mentioned outside city business, and that there's one business that we're providing service to, and that their difference is significant currently. Now, I don't know why that is, why that's been the practice, but why would we stop that? Why not continue, just be uniform in our raising of the rates? They're a customer just like anybody else. Not that I understand why there was a difference to begin with, but why did you choose that option?
So in Texas here recently, so prior to, I guess about 4 or 5 years ago, well, let me back up. So cities have original jurisdiction for rate making. So basically what that means is that inside the city limits, if a customer has an issue with your rates, you as a voted body has the jurisdiction to change rates, and customers appeal to you if they have a problem with the rates. Now, granted, if they see that, maybe that something's not happening to their favor, they can appeal to the Public Utility Commission. But for the most part, because you're a voted body, you are their appeal body. Outside city limit customers, you do not have jurisdiction over those rates. And so because they don't vote for you, they appeal to the Public Utility Commission now. Prior to about 5 years ago, that was over at the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. But here recently, we have been seeing a lot more cases that are coming from outside city limit customers appealing their rates as it pertains to these differentials. And so we've been involved in some of those cases, and to really be able to, if you get into that appeal, then you're looking at having to justify your rate differential. In talking to staff, we did consider doing cost of service. My guess is that because it's one commercial customer, that these rates were negotiated at some point. And so we just knowing the kind of the environment right now as it relates to outside city limit rates, we recommended to staff that you not adjust those any further to increase that differential further, without, of course, really going through a study that would really be able to defend what that rate differential is.
Yeah.
So I would recommend that you not increase their rates, because their appellate jurisdiction is to the PUC. And so if you adjust their rates and they take you to appeal, they only need 10%. And so they're one customer. And so they could take that appeal to the PUC, and the PUC would review that appeal.
I think, James, if I understood you correctly, it's not really with the differential, but bringing them in line with regular commercial customers. Is that right?
I think that's what they're doing now. I was trying to understand, to get back to her answer, I think she's absolutely spot on. That makes a lot of sense that, I can't justify this differential. I have no idea why this was here to begin with. And that is exactly the argument we would have to make if we're to keep it that way and they were to appeal to PUC. I was really just looking to understand why typically if I'm going to change rates, it's going to be a universal. I'm going to keep whatever differentials were there and just raise the base, if you will. And in this case, we raised the base on everything except for out of city limit. And I was trying to understand why that didn't happen, why why this consultant decided to get away from our practice of having the differential as the city. And now that she's able to articulate how that could put us in a legal situation in the future, because she's probably right, this was probably negotiated way back when, and all of those players aren't here anymore. And so we're gonna have a hard time justifying that. So the proposal that they have is the best for the city and really treats this customer more fairly compared to everybody else. And given that it's so far back, chances are whatever costs were involved in providing that service in the first place, whatever that was, has been long since reconciled.
Yeah, if I recall, that customer is off of Jones Road, south of 290. Does anybody know? And
That's who I would suspect it is.
Yeah, and I think they had, if I recall, they had requested several times to be on city water, and I think Mike Castro facilitated that, and it probably was a negotiated rate. I don't remember the exact time frame, but I remember extending service off of Jones Road south.
Yeah, I think there's another good policy reason to want to keep them happy with staying with the city water, because since they're outside of city limits, they have alternatives, obviously. And the last thing I would want to do is, although I don't know how much difference it would make, I don't want them deciding, well, we'll go off city water and we'll drill a water well instead, and then start using groundwater, which could contribute to subsidence. Granted,
I would bet
customer,
that they have a well already, and that's what they were trying to get off. But that was my follow-up question.
We should be encouraging.
My follow-up was, what are our rates compared to others? I mean, they could switch to City of Houston. The line's right there. It would cause some drilling, but they could make it happen. But in this case, I don't think we need to go any further. She brings up very valid points of why that decision was made.
Right.
All very good. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Sure. Thank you.
And if there's no more discussion on the topic, I'm looking for a motion on ordinance number 2020-20.
I move to approve ordinance 2020-20.
I'll second.
Okay, that was Bobby Warren, Councilmember Warren with the motion and Councilmember Wasson with the second. Any more discussion on the topic? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Anyone against? Any abstentions? Motion carries. We will move into our last item 5, discuss and take appropriate action concerning the date, time, and place to conduct the October 2020 regular session meeting of the City Council due to the extension of the early voting period for the presidential election. Lori Cootie.
Lori,
The
you're
meeting.
muted.
There you go.
Oh, sorry, somebody muted me. Yes, Mayor, if you will recall back in January, we did change our October 19 council meeting to October 12 because of the county using our facility for the presidential election. Well, since the governor has extended the early voting period, we're going to run into some issues with the election workers setting up their equipment. They won't be able to do it after our council meeting, and it could be that in October we are meeting in person and not via video. So this item is just basically to talk about what council would like to do. We have some suggestions. We could reschedule the meeting from October 12 to October 5, or we could just conduct the October 12 meeting in the U-shaped room. And if we are doing video, permitted to do video in October, we could just say we would do a virtual meeting as opposed to the U-shaped room. So those are the items that we're putting before the council for discussion.
Okay, so the options that she gave, of course, are to move it even a week sooner to October 5th, or to have it on the 12th, but in the U-shaped room. My thoughts are, I would like to get back to having in-person meetings as soon as we can, and looking at the COVID situation at least, and everyone can have different feelings on this, but for me, in 2 months, that to me, that seems like it's enough time for us to at least potentially have an in-person meeting, socially distanced. That's my feeling, but I'm not going to force anybody to want to come in for that. So we could still have it remotely, like we're having right now. But my personal feeling is I would like to try to get maybe back in person, but the more I'm thinking about this though, I'm kind of like, maybe we just do it through Zoom anyways, because of the complications just with the election and space and what is let me go around the room. Let me ask Bobby, what are your thoughts?
Well, my concern would be with the U-shaped room, if this pandemic is still ongoing, that is a kind of a small room, and trying to have a regular meeting in that room would be tricky. My other concern would be that that's awfully close to the September meeting, and I don't know how much would be on the agenda, and then to turn around in November. I don't know when the November regular meeting is scheduled for right now. It's the 16th of November. That would be a long period of time. I mean, I know we could have a special session if something really couldn't wait, or if something, if we had a lot of stuff build up, but yeah, it's tough because you're you've got one problem with the 5th and another one with the 12th. I think the 12th would probably be fine, but we would, I would say if there's still some social distancing requirements, assuming we can meet virtually, that would be the best thing to do.
Okay. I think you brought up some great points. Thinking about it, that's a big gap. I mean, you're going to have September's meeting, the 3rd Monday of September, then you have October 5th, not too far beyond that, and then you have a huge gap between the 5th and whenever our November meeting would be. So and then in the U-shaped room, if it was just us, we may be able to socially distance, but again, we've got to, of course, got to be open to the public. And I don't really want everyone packing in there if there's happens to be a topic that draws a lot of people. The ability to socially distance in that space. If we were in the bigger room, that would be a lot easier, but in the U-shaped room, it's probably just not advisable by any public health standards to do that. Even hopefully by October, we'll have less of an issue, but still an issue. So that would be my recommendation, I think, would be to have it on the 12th, right? That's what we had it scheduled for, Lori, would be to have it on the 12th.
Yes, sir.
And let's just opt to do it over Zoom like we're doing now. Does anybody have any other feelings about that, or does that sound like it's okay?
Yeah, we're going around the room. I agree. I don't see any change to the status quo. I don't think there's going to be any problem with having a Zoom meeting at that point. I prefer this method as long as it is permitted, and that I agree that changing the meeting date puts the September-October meeting too close together and October-November too far apart. And so if it is going to be in person, the meeting date should stay the same. We could look at the golf course, or perhaps contacting one of the churches about a large open room if we need to do it in person. Let's look at a different venue instead of the U-shaped room. But I prefer to stay on Zoom as long as it's allowed by the state.
I agree. Gary, you have any thoughts?
Yeah, no, I'm agreeing with you. The main concern is the giving these citizens their right to represent themselves in front of us. And they can't do that in a person-to-person meeting, because some of them will have underlying conditions where they can't risk coming in the room.
Agreed.
So the only way you can do it is with the Zoom.
Yeah. Greg, you have any thoughts? You're muted, sorry.
No, it really doesn't matter to me, but if we're looking at doing Zoom, do we want to keep it on the 19th? Because the facility was going to be occupied on the 19th. We moved it back to the 12th, but if we're going to do Zoom, why don't we just keep it back on the 19th?
That's a
great catch.
Yeah.
I thought there was another reason besides elections why we moved it to the 12th, but if it was just elections, I think that makes the most sense.
Okay.
Was that the reason we moved it in January?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what I'm hearing is sort of, I've seen a lot of heads nodding about having the October meeting, moving it back to October 19th and having it via Zoom. And if that's what we want to do, then I'm looking for, well, I guess we're not doing the motion or a resolution. I guess that seems like what we want to do. I'm seeing nodding heads. So let's go ahead and make that the direction we give to Lori.
I think we need a motion.
Right? I think we're good.
Oh, okay.
I'll make that move.
All right, that moves us into mayor and council comments. I will go ahead and start with Councilmember Wasson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few items. I'll try to be quick. School is starting soon. Some are going virtually, some are physically. It's been 6 months since kids have been in school. Let's start to repay attention to school zones again. They actually matter and they serve a purpose. So let's start to slow down around neighborhoods and schools and the rest. Real quick, also tonight we kind of helped codify state regulation. There's a lot of regulations that are by the county, the state, the federal government that we as a city don't have the opportunity to do anything about. We just kind of have to follow them. So, and I know we as city council members kind of take some heat for that. I'm happy to pass people along to Commissioner Cagle, Rosenthal, Senator Betancourt, and so on and so forth. But just remember, whether it's beverage regulations or COVID-19 or other things, we're kind of limited and sometimes in what we can do. And finally, just wanted to point out that we've missed recognizing officers and city workers with Officer of the Month and so on, and Worker of the Quarter. I just wanted to thank once again all city workers and welcome our new Parks Director, Robert. Thank you guys for your tireless effort and dedication and hitting curveballs out of the park. Whatever comes at you, you take care of, and you make us a shining star that's like on our logo. So thanks.
Thank you, Jer. Greg, you have anything?
I don't. I'd just like to welcome Robert to Jersey Village. I hope you enjoy your tenure here, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Gary?
I want to second that great big welcome to Robert, and I want to just say that you're inheriting a very good staff, and I hope you take care of them.
Thank you, Gary. James?
I really don't have much. Echo a lot of the same comments. Welcome, Robert, and everybody be careful driving. School zone.
Definitely. Bobby?
Wanted to also echo the welcome to Robert. I think you'll really enjoy working here in Jersey Village. It is definitely a small town feel in the midst of a big town. But the other thing I wanted to say is I just wanted to thank the Jersey Village Police Department for their professionalism. They have had a heck of a time the last few weeks, but I would say it looks like that due to their outstanding training and professionalism and dedication, they've come out pretty well each of those times. You know, you never want to see one of those major incident reports come to your email, but I'm very glad that during a few harrowing moments here and there that they have come out unscathed relatively, and that looks like we've been getting some real bad guys off the street lately. Maybe not in the easiest way, but we're getting them off the street. So I just wanted to thank them, and I'm so glad that we're seeing the additional sales tax revenue that allows us to continue to provide you guys with the equipment and the training and all of the things you need to continue that track record.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. I just wanted to say thanks to the city staff and welcome to Robert. And you guys are continuing to do a fantastic job with all the challenges that you're facing. Thanks very much for all the reports that you give to us to keep us apprised of what's going on. I just want to say I drove to Colorado on a road trip with my family about a week ago, just to get out of the heat. And, you know, we had a really great time as a family, and I listened to a ton of podcasts on the 18-hour drive there and the 18-hour drive back. And one of the podcasts was about civics. Civics 101 is a great podcast. And it's, I highly recommend if anyone is looking for a podcast to pick up on. Civics 101, it really goes over the basics of the Constitution, basics of how our government was put together, but it also kind of touches on local government and why it's so important for people to step up and serve not only as city council members and mayors, but also on boards and commissions, so that they can put their stamp on their own community. So I would encourage everybody to step up, and if you see something that you want changed, you can talk to us and see, hey, how do we change this? You know, what can I do? And we can figure out how to plug you into making Jersey Village your actual community that we all know and love. So pick that up if you want. And with that, I'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Everybody have a great rest of the month. We'll see you around in September.